When 82-year-old Myrtle Perkins can't afford her heart medication after prices triple overnight, she makes the dangerous choice to skip doses to make them last longer. After collapsing alone in her bathroom, her story catches the attention of the world, and one billionaire with the power to change everything. What begins as one woman's struggle to survive becomes a movement that transforms an entire industry. But the real reason Elon Musk was so moved by Myrtle's plight remains hidden until the very end. Sometimes the most powerful changes begin with one simple truth spoken aloud. No one should have to choose between their heart and their home. Myrtle Perkins held the orange prescription bottle upside down and shook it. Nothing came out, not even the smallest white pill. She sighed and placed the empty bottle on her kitchen table, right next to 3 envelopes with red past due stamps on them. "One more week," she whispered to herself, her wrinkled fingers tracing the calendar hanging on her refrigerator. One more week until her Social Security check would arrive. One more week of trying to stay alive without her heart medicine. The small kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence of her apartment. It was the same clock Frank had hung 30 years ago when they first moved to Oak Ridge. The apartment was small even then, but they had made it work. Now at 82 and living alone, the space felt both too empty and too expensive. Myrtle looked at the numbers scribbled on the notepad by her phone. 247 dined. That's what her heart medication costs now, triple what it was last year. Here, more than half of what remained of her monthly check after rent. "Frank," she said softly to the photo on her wall, "what would you do?" Frank had been gone 5 years now. Heart attack, quick and sudden, the doctors had said. Some days, Myrtle thought that might be better than this slow worry, this counting of pills and pennies. The rent on her apartment had gone up again last month, $75 more than she didn't have. The landlord, Mr. Bentley, had been kind enough so far, accepting partial payments when she could make them. But his patience was wearing thin, and Myrtle couldn't blame him. He had bills to pay too. She stood up slowly, holding on to the edge of the table as a wave of dizziness passed through her. This had been happening more often since she started skipping doses, trying to make her pills last longer. The doctor had been very clear. "Take 1 tablet twice daily, Mrs. Perkins, without fail." But what choice did she have? Myrtle made her way to the sink to wash her breakfast dish. 1 slice of toast and a half cup of tea. She was trying to make the bread last until next week, too. A knock at the door startled her. "Myrtle, you in there? It's Doris from next door." Myrtle quickly wiped her eyes and straightened her cardigan. "Coming, Doris." She opened the door to see her neighbor's concerned face. Doris Jackson was 10 years younger than Myrtle, still spry at 72, with her silver hair always neatly styled. "Good morning, I made too many muffins again," Doris said, holding out a plate covered in foil. "Blueberry. I remembered they're your favorite." Myrtle knew Doris didn't make too many muffins. This was her way of checking in, of helping without making it feel like charity. "Oh, you're too kind. Come in, I just made some tea." The lie came easily. Myrtle couldn't afford to waste tea bags, but she would make an exception for Doris. As Myrtle turned to put the kettle on, another spell of dizziness hit her. She gripped the counter tightly, hoping Doris wouldn't notice. But Doris noticed everything. "Myrtle, are you okay?" She was by Myrtle's side instantly, a steady hand on her elbow. "I'm fine, dear, just stood up too quickly," Myrtle said, forcing a smile. "Old bones, you know." Doris helped her to the kitchen chair. Her eyes scanned the table, lipletic, lingering for a moment on the empty pill bottle and the past due notices. She didn't say anything about them. "Have you called Dr. Mason about these dizzy spells?" Doris asked instead. Myrtle shook her head. "No need to bother him. It'll pass." The kettle whistled, and Doris got up to make the tea. "You're not bothering anyone by taking care of yourself, Myrtle. That's what the doctors are there for." Myrtle watched as Doris opened cupboards looking for tea bags. There were only 2 left in the box. Doris frowned, but again said nothing. "How's your grandson doing at college, Myrtle?" asked Doris, changing the subject. "Tennessee State, wasn't it?" Doris lit up, as she always did when talking about her family. "Oh, he's doing so well, made the dean's list last semester." As Doris chatted about her grandson, Myrtle tried to focus, but her mind kept drifting to the empty pill bottle. She thought about the pamphlet the pharmacy had given her about patient assistance programs. She had called the number, spent an hour on the phone being transferred from one person to another, filled out paperwork, and was finally told she made too much money to qualify. Too much money. The idea would be laughable if it weren't so frightening. Myrtle, are you listening? Doris was looking at her with concern again. I'm sorry, dear, just wool gathering. Myrtle took a small sip of tea, savoring it. Tell me more about Tommy's classes. After Doris left, promising to check in tomorrow, Myrtle sat alone again at her kitchen table. She should eat one of the muffins. She knew her body needed food, but she felt too tired to eat. She thought about calling her daughter Elaine, who lived in California with her husband, but what would she say? Elaine had her own troubles with the twins in college and her husband's recent job change. The last thing Myrtle wanted was to be a burden. I've managed this long on my own, she said to Frank's photo. I'll figure something out. Myrtle stood up carefully, steadying herself against the table. She needed to use the bathroom and then maybe lie down for a bit. The dizziness seemed worse today. In the bathroom, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her face looked pale, the skin under her eyes dark. You've looked better, old girl, she muttered to her reflection. As she turned to leave, the room began to spin faster and faster, like a carnival ride she couldn't get off. Myrtle reached for the sink, but her hand met empty air. The last thing she saw was the cracked tile of her bathroom floor rushing up to meet her. The last thing she thought was, who will feed Mr. Whiskers if I'm gone? Then, darkness. In the quiet apartment, the kitchen clock continued to tick. The empty pill bottle sat on the table, lid off, waiting to be refilled. On the counter, the blueberry muffins remained untouched under their foil covering. And on the wall, Frank's smiling face watched over the home where his wife now lay alone on the cold bathroom floor, her heart struggling to keep its rhythm without the medicine she could no longer afford. Beep, beep, beep. The steady sound reached through the darkness, pulling Myrtle back. She tried to open her eyes, but they felt so heavy. Something pinched her arm. Voices swirled around her, quiet but urgent. Blood pressure's stabilizing. Has anyone called her family? No emergency contacts listed. Myrtle finally managed to open her eyes. Bright lights made her squint. A white ceiling with fluorescent panels, not her bathroom, not her home. Mrs. Perkins, can you hear me? A man in a white coat leaned over her. I'm Dr. Reeves. You're at Oak Ridge General Hospital. Hospital. The word sent a jolt of panic through her body. She couldn't afford a hospital stay. I need to go home, she whispered, her voice scratchy and weak. Mr. Whiskers needs feeding. Your cat is fine, said a female voice. Your neighbor Doris found you and called 911. She's taking care of Mr. Whiskers. Myrtle turned her head slightly to see a nurse adjusting something on a machine. Her name tag read Tanya Wilson, RN. She had kind eyes and dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. What happened? Myrtle asked. Dr. Reeves checked something on his clipboard. You had what we call a minor cardiac event, Mrs. Perkins. Your heart rhythm became irregular. Has this happened before? Myrtle tried to remember. I've been dizzy lately, but nothing like this. Are you taking your medications as prescribed? The question hung in the air. Myrtle looked away. Mrs. Perkins, Dr. Reeves pressed. I tried to make them last longer, she admitted quietly. Dr. Reeves frowned. Your heart medication isn't optional. Skipping doses can lead to exactly what happened today, or worse. Nurse Tanya stepped closer. The medicine helps your heart beat in the right rhythm, Mrs. Perkins. Without it, your heart works harder than it should. I know that, Myrtle said, feeling tears form in her eyes, but I couldn't afford to refill it. Not until my Social Security check comes next week. The room went quiet. Dr. Reeves looked uncomfortable. He scribbled something on his clipboard. We'll get you stabilized and talk about medication management before discharge, he said. Nurse Wilson will take care of you for now. I'll check back in a few hours. After he left, Nurse Tanya adjusted Myrtle's pillow. How much does your medication cost, Mrs. Perkins? She asked. Please call me Myrtle, she sighed. $247.88 for a month's supply. It used to be under $80 last year. Tanya's eyes widened. That's criminal. It's life, Myrtle replied. I'm not the only one at the senior center. That's all anyone talks about, which medicine they're skipping this month to pay for something else. Tanya checked Myrtle's IV line. Her face was troubled. Doesn't your insurance help? Medicare only covers so much, After Frank passed, I lost his good insurance from the factory. Myrtle tried to sit up a bit. When can I go home? Dr. Reeves wants to keep you overnight for observation. Tanya hesitated. Mrs. Myrtle, does your family know about your situation? Myrtle shook her head slightly. My daughter has twins in college. She has enough to worry about without her old mother adding to it. But if she knew... No, Myrtle said firmly. I raised her to stand on her own 2 feet. I need to do the same. Tanya didn't argue, but Myrtle could see she wanted to. Instead, she checked Myrtle's vital signs again. I'm going to help you, Tanya said suddenly. I don't know how yet, but this isn't right. No one should have to choose between medicine and food. Myrtle smiled sadly. That's kind of you, dear, but unless you can change how these drug companies work, there's not much to be done. Maybe there is, Tanya replied, a determined look crossing her face. Sometimes it just takes one story to make people see what's happening. Before Myrtle could respond, Doris rushed into the room. Myrtle, thank goodness you're awake. She hurried to the bedside. I came to borrow sugar, which I didn't actually need, and when you didn't answer, I used the spare key you gave me. You saved her life, Tanya said. Another hour and things might have been much worse. Doris took Myrtle's hand, tears in her eyes. Don't you ever scare me like that again. Mr. Whiskers? Myrtle asked. Fed and content. I gave him extra treats for good behavior. Doris leaned closer. Now, why didn't you tell me about the medicine? I could have helped. It's not your problem to solve, Doris. That's what friends are for, you stubborn woman. The next morning, Dr. Reeves discharged Myrtle with strict instructions and a week's supply of sample medications from the hospital pharmacy. This will get you through until your benefits come, he said, but you must take every dose as prescribed. No more stretching it out. Myrtle nodded, though inside she worried about what would happen after this week. Nurse Tanya came in as Myrtle was getting dressed to leave. I'm off shift now. I can drive you home, she offered. That's not necessary, Myrtle started to say, but Tanya shook her head. I insist, and I want to see where you live so I can check on you. During the drive to Myrtle's apartment, Tanya was quiet as if thinking hard about something. When they arrived, she helped Myrtle up the stairs and into the apartment. Tanya looked around at the small, neat space. Her eyes lingered on the past due notices still on the kitchen table, the nearly empty refrigerator Myrtle opened to get water, the worn furniture that had seen better days. I'm coming back tomorrow, Tanya said firmly, as she set Myrtle's new pill bottle on the counter and poured a glass of water. You take this now, while I'm watching. Myrtle did as she was told, then looked up at the young nurse. Why do you care so much about an old woman you just met? Tanya's eyes softened. Because someone should, because this shouldn't be happening to you or anyone. She handed Myrtle a piece of paper with her phone number. Call me anytime, day or night. I promise I'll find a way to help. As Tanya left, Myrtle sat at her kitchen table, the new pill bottle before her. 7 days of safety. Then what? She looked at Frank's photo. She seems determined, doesn't she? Myrtle said to her husband's smiling face. But some problems are too big for one person to fix. Mr. Whiskers jumped into her lap, purring loudly. What Myrtle didn't know, couldn't know, was that Nurse Tanya Wilson was already keeping her promise in her car outside Myrtle's apartment building. She was typing a story on her phone, a story that would travel much further than either of them could imagine. Tanya couldn't get Myrtle's face out of her mind, the resigned look in her eyes, as if this was just how things were supposed to be, the empty fridge, the stack of past due notices. She sat in her car for nearly an hour, typing and retyping the post on her phone. It had to be just right, not just another sad story that people would scroll past, but something that would make them stop and think. Finally, she hit post. Today I met a woman who collapsed because she couldn't afford her heart medication. She's 82 and lives alone. The drug company tripled the price of her pills this year, making them cost more than half her monthly income after rent. So she skipped doses, trying to make them last longer. She nearly died. She didn't tell her family because she didn't want to be a burden. She didn't ask for help because she was raised to stand on her own 2 feet. This isn't just her story at the senior center she goes to. This is what everyone talks about. Which medicine they're skipping this month to pay for food or rent. I gave her a week's worth of samples from our hospital. Then what? back to choosing between her heart and her home. This is happening everywhere to thousands of seniors, our parents, our grandparents, people who worked hard their whole lives. When did we decide this was acceptable? Tanya added a few statistics about drug price increases and senior poverty rates, then tagged several celebrities and news outlets. She didn't expect much. Her posts usually got a few likes from friends and family, nothing more. By the time she got home to her small apartment, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Notifications flooded in. The post had been shared over 100 times already. Comments poured in, many from people sharing similar stories. My father cuts his blood pressure pills in half to make them last longer. My grandma has to choose between her arthritis meds and heating her home in winter. I'm a pharmacy tech and see this every day. Elderly people crying at our counter when they see the price. Tanya stared at her phone in disbelief. Something about Myrtle's story had touched a nerve. The next morning, Tanya checked on Myrtle before her hospital shift. She brought groceries, nothing fancy, just basics like bread, eggs, milk, and soup. You didn't need to do this. Myrtle protested when she saw the bags. Consider it payment for the tea you made me yesterday, Tanya said with a smile, not mentioning that they never actually had tea. As Tanya put the groceries away, her phone kept buzzing. Popular today, aren't we? Myrtle noticed, raising an eyebrow. Just some work stuff, Tanya replied, not ready to tell Myrtle about the post. Did you take your morning pill? Myrtle nodded. Right on schedule. After making sure Myrtle was comfortable, Tanya headed to work. In the hospital parking lot, she finally checked her phone. Her mouth fell open. The post had over 50,000 shares now, and there was a message from her cousin, Zach, who worked at Channel 8 News. Tanya, your post is everywhere. Our producer wants to talk to you about doing a segment on it. Call me ASAP. During her lunch break, Tanya called Zach back. The news station wanted to interview her and Myrtle, if she was willing. I don't know Zach, Tanya said hesitantly. I never asked her permission to share her story. I didn't use her real name, but still, this could make a real difference. Put a face to the problem, Zach argued. You said yourself, this is happening to thousands of seniors. Let me talk to her first, Tanya decided. It's her choice. After her shift, Tanya drove back to Myrtle's apartment. Mr. Whiskers greeted her at the door, rubbing against her legs. Myrtle was in her armchair, looking better than yesterday. She had more color in her cheeks, twice in one day. I'll get spoiled with all this attention. Tanya sat on the couch across from her. Myrtle, I need to tell you something. She pulled out her phone. I wrote a post about your situation. I didn't use your name or any details that would identify you, but it's gotten a lot of attention. She showed Myrtle the post and the thousands of comments and shares. Myrtle's eyes widened as she scrolled through the comments. All these people. My cousin works at Channel 8. They want to do a news story about this, about what happened to you and what's happening to seniors everywhere. Myrtle handed the phone back, her hand trembling slightly. I don't know about being on television. You don't have to decide right now, Tanya assured her, but your story is already helping people feel less alone. Imagine what could happen if more people heard it. Myrtle was quiet for a long moment, looking at Frank's photo on the wall. What would they want me to do for this news story? Just tell your story, like you told me. Would it help? Really help others like me? I believe it could, Tanya said. Sometimes change starts with one voice. Myrtle took a deep breath. Frank always said I was too stubborn for my own good. Maybe it's time to be stubborn for someone else's good. She nodded slowly. I'll do it. 2 days later, Zach and a camera crew came to Myrtle's apartment. They filmed her taking her medication, showing her calendar where she marked the days until her social security check, looking at photos of Frank. I never thought I'd have to choose between my heart medicine and paying rent, Myrtle told the reporter, her voice steady despite her nervousness. But that's the choice many of us face now. They interviewed Tanya too, asking what she witnessed as a nurse every day. I see patients who can't afford their medications, she said. They end up back in the hospital sicker than before. It costs our healthcare system more in the long run, not to mention the human cost. That evening, the story aired on the local news. By morning, it had been picked up by a national network. Clips spread across the internet, each with millions of views. The face of America's prescription drug crisis, the headlines read above Myrtle's image. I never wanted to be famous, Myrtle told Tanya when she visited the next day. Her phone had been ringing all morning with calls from reporters, especially not for something like this. You're giving voice to people who felt forgotten, Tanya said, helping Myrtle sort through the messages. That's pretty amazing. What neither of them knew was that among the millions watching, Myrtle's story had reached someone with the power to do more than just listen, someone who would soon change everything. And now, we go live to our correspondent outside Pharmatech headquarters, where protesters have gathered for the third straight day. Myrtle sat in her armchair, staring at her small television in disbelief. On screen, hundreds of people held signs with slogans like, "Medicine is a right," and "People over profits." Some even held pictures of Myrtle's face, taken from the news segment. It had been 1 week since her story aired. 1 week of nonstop phone calls, interview requests, and now this, protests at the headquarters of the company that made her heart medication. The doorbell rang, making Mr. Whiskers jump from her lap. Myrtle called, moving slowly to the door. She no longer felt dizzy now that she was taking her medication regularly. The hospital samples would run out tomorrow, though she tried not to think about that. Tanya stood at the door, holding a stack of envelopes. Your mail was overflowing in the box downstairs, she explained, stepping inside. And you have about 20 voicemails from reporters. I never asked for all this attention, Myrtle sighed, taking the mail. I know, Tanya glanced at the TV, where footage of the protests continued to play. But your story touched something in people. You put a face to a problem that was easy to ignore before. Myrtle sifted through the envelopes. Bill. Advertisement. Bill. Then she paused at a plain white envelope with no return address. She opened it and gasped. Inside was a check for $1,500 and a note that read simply, "For your rent, from someone who cares." Who would send this? Myrtle's hands trembled. Tanya examined the envelope. Anonymous. But it would cover your rent for 3 months, wouldn't it? Myrtle nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes. I can't accept this. It's too much. Someone wants to help Myrtle. Let them. Before Myrtle could argue further, her phone rang. Tanya answered it, then covered the receiver. It's that national morning show again. They want you to come to New York for an interview. Myrtle shook her head. I'm not going to New York. I've said everything I need to say. Tanya spoke briefly with the producer, then hung up. They said they understand, but they're doing a whole week of stories about medication costs inspired by you. On the television, the news had changed to a statement from Pharmatech's CEO, a stern-looking man in an expensive suit. While we sympathize with individual hardship cases, the development of life-saving medications requires significant investment. Our pricing reflects the reality of research and development costs. Myrtle snorted. Hardship cases. That's what I am now. They're feeling the pressure, Tanya said, sitting beside Myrtle. Your story started this. And what has it accomplished? The medicine still costs the same. But people are talking about it now. That's the first step. Later that evening, after Tanya left, Myrtle went through more of her mail. Most were cards and letters from strangers across the country. My mother faces the same struggle. Thank you for speaking out. I work at a pharmacy and see seniors choosing between medicine and food every day. Your courage gives me hope that things might change. I'm sending $20. It's not much, but I hope it helps with your next refill. There were checks and cash in many of the envelopes, small amounts, mostly $5 here, $10 there. One envelope contained 3 crisp $100 bills with no note at all. Myrtle placed all the money in a shoebox, unsure what to do with it. It felt wrong to use it for herself when so many others were struggling too. The next morning, Doris came over with the newspaper. Myrtle's face was on the front page again. You're more famous than that movie star who moved to Oakdale last year, Doris said, pouring coffee for them both. Famous for being poor and sick, Myrtle said wryly. Not exactly what I dreamed of. Doris sat across from her at the kitchen table. Have you seen these online groups? People are organizing medicine exchanges where those who have extra share with those who can't afford it. Is that even legal? Doris admitted. Probably not, but it shows how desperate people are. Myrtle's medication was running dangerously low. Tomorrow would be her last pill. Her Social Security check had arrived, but after paying for the minimum on her past due bills, she still couldn't afford the full prescription. Just as she was worrying about this, her phone rang. "It's Tanya. Turn on Channel 8 right now," she said urgently. Myrtle switched on the TV to see the Pharmatech CEO at a press conference. In light of recent public discussion, Pharmatech is announcing a new patient assistance program for seniors on fixed incomes. Those who qualify will receive their medications at a significant discount. Doris clapped her hands. "Did you hear that? This is because of you." But Myrtle had been through enough assistance program applications to be skeptical. The question is, will they make it impossible to qualify like all the others? As if answering her directly, the CEO continued, "Unlike previous programs, we're simplifying the qualification process. If you receive Social Security as your primary income, you automatically qualify." Myrtle and Doris looked at each other in shock. Later that day, Tanya brought over the application form. It was surprisingly simple, just one page. "They're feeling the heat," Tanya said. "Their stock dropped 15% this week. Will it be approved in time?" Myrtle wondered, thinking of her nearly empty pill bottle. "I called in a favor at the pharmacy. They'll give you an emergency supply until this processes." As Tanya was leaving, she stopped at the door. "Oh, almost forgot. Another reporter called the hospital looking for me. This one says she represents Elon Musk's media team." Myrtle looked up, confused. "Who's Elon Musk?" Tanya smiled. "Someone with a lot of influence. I'll tell you about him tomorrow." Neither of them realized that the gathering storm was about to become a hurricane, one that would sweep through the pharmaceutical industry with unexpected force. Tanya collapsed onto her couch after a 12-hour shift at the hospital. 3 emergency surgeries, a short-staffed floor, and a patient coding just before her shift ended had left her exhausted. She kicked off her shoes and was about to turn off her phone when a notification popped up. A direct message from someone she didn't know. Normally, she would ignore messages from strangers since Myrtle's story went viral. Her social media had been flooded with people wanting to connect. But something about this username, Tesla Space 42, caught her eye. "Hello, Nurse Wilson. My name is Caroline Lang, and I work for Elon Musk. Mr. Musk saw the news story about Myrtle Perkins and would like to learn more. This is not a joke. Please call me at this number if you're willing to discuss." Tom stared at the message. A scam, surely. A troll pretending to be connected to a famous billionaire. But what if it wasn't? She searched online for Caroline Lang, Elon Musk, and found a LinkedIn profile showing a Caroline Lang who was indeed listed as Senior Communications Director at one of Musk's companies. The profile picture matched the tiny avatar in the message. Tanya's heart raced. Should she call? What would she even say? Before she could overthink it, she dialed the number. "Caroline Lang speaking," answered a crisp professional voice. "Hi, this is Tanya Wilson. I received your message about Myrtle Perkins." "Nurse Wilson? Thank you for calling," the woman's tone warmed. "Yes, Mr. Musk watched the segment about Miss Perkins and was quite moved by her situation. He was." Tanya couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "Indeed? Indeed?" He's been researching medication pricing issues recently and felt Mrs. Perkins's story illustrated the problem perfectly. He'd like to speak with her, if possible. Tanya sat up straighter. "Speak with her? Like directly?" "Yes, a video call would be ideal. Would you be able to facilitate this?" Tanya's mind raced. "I'd need to ask Myrtle first. She's been overwhelmed by all the attention." "Of course, Mr. Musk understands the sensitivity. This would be a private conversation, not for publicity. He simply wants to hear her perspective firsthand." After getting more details, Tanya promised to speak with Myrtle and call back tomorrow. When she hung up, she sat in stunned silence. Elon Musk, the man who built electric cars and rockets, one of the richest people on the planet, wanted to talk to Myrtle. The next morning, despite having slept barely 4 hours, Tanya drove to Myrtle's apartment. She found the elderly woman sorting through more letters that had arrived. "You look terrible, dear," Myrtle observed as she let Tanya in. "In hospital, keeping you busy?" "That and something else." Tanya sat at the kitchen table. "Remember that message I mentioned from Elon Musk's team?" Myrtle nodded vaguely, arranging cookies on a plate. "The rich fellow you were going to tell me about?" "Well, I spoke with his communications director last night." Tanya took a deep breath. "He wants to talk to you directly on a video call." The cookie in Myrtle's hand stopped halfway to the plate. Why on earth would he want to talk to me? He saw your story on the news. Apparently, it moved him. Myrtle placed the cookie down carefully. And who is he exactly? I don't keep up with all these tech billionaires. Tanya gave her a quick overview. Tesla, SpaceX, his reputation for disrupting industries, his enormous wealth and influence. And what would I say to someone like that? Myrtle asked, looking down at her worn house dress. Just your story. Like you told the news. He wants to hear directly from you. Myrtle was quiet for a long moment. Will there be cameras? More news people? No, it would be private. Just you talking to him. I'd be with you, of course. Mr. Whiskers jumped onto Myrtle's lap, sensing her unease. She stroked his fur absently. When tomorrow, if you're willing, his team can set up the call whenever works for you. Myrtle looked around her small apartment. I wouldn't know what to wear or what to say. Just be yourself. That's who he wants to talk to. The real Myrtle Perkins. After more discussion and reassurance, Myrtle finally agreed. Tanya called Caroline back, and the video call was scheduled for 10 a.m. the next day. That night, Myrtle couldn't sleep. She'd never spoken to anyone famous before, let alone one of the richest men in the world. What could she possibly say that would matter to someone like that? She got up at 5 a.m. and cleaned her already tidy apartment. She tried on her 3 good outfits, finally settling on a simple blue dress that Frank had always liked. She put her hair up in her best style and even added a touch of lipstick she hadn't worn in years. By the time Tanya arrived at 9:30 with her laptop, Myrtle was a bundle of nerves. You look lovely, Tanya said sincerely. I feel silly, Myrtle replied, smoothing her dress. Dressing up to talk to someone through a computer. Tanya set up her laptop on the kitchen table, positioning it so the camera wouldn't catch the water stain on the ceiling or the crack in the wall behind the refrigerator. She tested the connection and helped Myrtle practice looking at the camera. At exactly 10 a.m., the call came through. Tanya answered, and suddenly there he was on the screen. Elon Musk, sitting in what looked like a sleek office, wearing a simple black t-shirt. Mrs. Perkins, thank you for speaking with me, he said, his accent slightly unusual to Myrtle's ear. I appreciate your time. Thank you for wanting to speak with me, Mr. Musk, Myrtle replied, her voice surprisingly steady. I'm not sure what I can tell you that you don't already know, he smiled. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from direct experience, not data. Your story touched many people, including me. As they talked, Myrtle gradually relaxed. Musk asked about her life, her 35 years as an elementary school teacher, her late husband's work at the factory, how she managed on her fixed income. My grandmother faced similar challenges, he shared unexpectedly. She lived in Canada, but the issues were the same. Fixed income, rising costs, difficult choices. What happened to her? Myrtle asked. She had family to help. Not everyone does. He leaned forward slightly. What bothers you most about your situation, Mrs. Perkins? Myrtle thought for a moment. That I'm not alone. That there are thousands like me, maybe millions, making these same impossible choices. Some don't have neighbors who check on them or nurses who care enough to tell their stories. She looked directly at the camera. Now, I worry about them more than myself. Musk nodded, something shifting in his expression. Most people in your position would focus on their own problems. At my age, Mr. Musk, you learn that your problems are rarely just your own. We're all connected somehow. They spoke for nearly 40 minutes. As the call was ending, Musk thanked her again. You've given me a lot to think about, Mrs. Perkins, more than you know. After the call ended, Tanya looked at Myrtle in amazement. You were incredible, so poised, so authentic. He was easier to talk to than I expected, Myrtle admitted. Do you think it will make any difference? I don't know, Tanya said honestly, but he's someone who has the power to change things if he wanted to. Well, at least I can tell Doris I spoke to a famous billionaire. She'll be beside herself. Myrtle smiled, then grew serious. But I won't get my hopes up. Men like that have bigger concerns than old women and their pill bottles. Neither of them could have guessed that at that very moment, Elon Musk was calling a meeting with his top executives and making plans that would soon rock the pharmaceutical industry to its core. The day after her video call with Elon Musk, Myrtle sat with Doris at the Senior Center's weekly bingo game. For the first time in months, she felt well enough to attend. I still can't believe you spoke to Elon Musk, Doris whispered, marking her card as the numbers were called. What was he wearing? Was his office fancy? A black t-shirt, nothing special, Myrtle replied, and I couldn't see much of his office, just a wall with some pictures of rockets. Did he promise to help with your medication? Myrtle shook her head. We didn't talk about that. He mostly asked questions about my life, how I manage. He mentioned his grandmother had similar problems. Bingo, called Mrs. Avery from 2 tables over. That woman always wins, Doris muttered as a new game began. She leaned closer to Myrtle. So nothing came of it? Just talk. What did you expect? That a billionaire would solve my problems because we had one conversation? Myrtle arranged her new bingo card. He was polite, that's all. But despite her practical words, Myrtle couldn't help wondering why someone like Elon Musk would take the time to speak with her if he wasn't planning something. The question lingered as she returned home that afternoon. The next day, Tanya came by after her shift, bringing dinner from the deli down the street. How are you feeling? She asked, as they ate at Myrtle's small kitchen table. Better than I have in months, Myrtle admitted. These new pills from the assistance program seem to be working just as well as the expensive ones. That's great news, Tanya hesitated. Have you heard anything more from Mr. Musk's team? No, and I don't expect to. He was just curious, that's all. Tanya looked like she wanted to say more, but was interrupted by her phone ringing. She checked the screen. It's the hospital. I should take this. While Tanya spoke in the other room, Myrtle cleared the dishes. She felt a new energy in her body. Now that her medication was working properly again, the dizziness was gone. Her heart no longer raced when she climbed the stairs. It was amazing what a little white pill could do, and infuriating that something so essential could be priced out of reach for so many. Tanya returned, her expression unreadable. Everything okay at work? Myrtle asked. That wasn't about work, Tanya sat down slowly. That was Caroline Lang again. Myrtle's hands stilled on the dish towel. What did she want? She asked if we watched the tech news today. When I said no, she told me to turn it on. Now something's happening. Tanya pulled out her phone and quickly searched for tech news. Here it is, she said, her eyes widening. She turned the phone so Myrtle could see. On the screen was a video of Elon Musk at some kind of press conference. The headline below read, Musk announces Project Lifeline to tackle medication costs. Tanya turned up the volume. The current system is broken, Musk was saying. When an 82-year-old woman has to choose between her heart medication and paying rent, something is fundamentally wrong. I recently spoke with this woman, and her dignity in the face of an impossible situation moved me deeply. Myrtle sank into a chair, her heart pounding. He's talking about me. Today, Musk continued, I'm announcing Project Lifeline. Beginning with a $50 million personal investment, we will partner with generic drug manufacturers to create a direct-to-consumer platform for affordable medications, starting with the 100 most commonly prescribed drugs for seniors. The camera panned to show a group of business people nodding behind him. Our first partnership is with Generic Care Pharmaceuticals. Together, we'll build a new manufacturing facility dedicated solely to this mission. We expect to cut costs by 70 to 80% on most medications. Myrtle and Tanya stared at each other in disbelief. He did this because of you, Tanya whispered. Not just me, Myrtle said, her voice shaking. All of us, everyone who can't afford their medicine. As the news sank in, Myrtle's phone began to ring, then Tanya's. Messages flooded in from reporters seeking comments. Even Mr. Whiskers seemed to sense something momentous had occurred, rubbing anxiously against Myrtle's legs. I need to turn these off, Tanya said, silencing both phones. This is going to be crazy for a while. Myrtle nodded, still processing what she'd just heard. $50 million, a new manufacturing facility, all because she'd shared her story. What happens now? She asked. I don't know, Tanya admitted, but it seems like something big has started later that evening. After Tanya had gone home with a promise to return in the morning, Myrtle sat alone in her quiet apartment. She looked at Frank's photo. Can you believe it? She asked the smiling face. A conversation with a stranger, and suddenly, there's hope for change. She thought about her fellow seniors at the center, many of whom face the same struggles with medication costs. Would this really help them? Or was it just another rich man's project that would fizzle out before making real change? The cynical part of her, the part that had learned hard lessons about empty promises over her 82 years, warned her not to get too excited. But another part, a part that had been dormant for too long, felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Her phone rang again, displaying a number she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Mrs. Perkins?" said a familiar voice with that slight accent. "It's Elon Musk. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "No, not at all," she said, surprised at her own calmness. "I just saw the news. I wanted to tell you personally, but the announcement moved faster than expected. Your story, our conversation, it crystallized something I've been thinking about for a long time." "It's very generous of you," Myrtle said, "but will it really work? The pharmaceutical companies are very, very powerful." "They are," he agreed, "but disruption is what I do best. This won't be easy or quick, but it's necessary, and it's just the beginning." After they spoke for a few more minutes, Myrtle hung up feeling both overwhelmed and strangely peaceful. Whatever happened next, she had been part of starting something important. She took her evening pill with a glass of water, thinking about how such a small thing could hold such power, the power of life itself. No one should have to beg for that power or choose between it and a roof over their head. As she got ready for bed, Myrtle had no idea that the true storm was just beginning. Pharmaceutical executives across the country were already gathering in emergency meetings to address the threat that Elon Musk, and by extension, Myrtle Perkins, now posed to their bottom line. The morning after Musk's announcement, Myrtle woke to the sound of voices outside her apartment building. She pulled back her curtain to see a cluster of news vans parked along the street. Reporters with microphones and cameras stood near the entrance. Her phone rang. It was Doris. "Myrtle, have you seen outside? There are reporters everywhere." "I see them," Myrtle replied, letting the curtain fall back into place. "How did they find my address?" "Someone must have leaked it. Do you want me to come over? I can bring my umbrella to shoo them away if needed." The image of Doris battling reporters with her flowered umbrella made Myrtle smile despite her anxiety. "No need for that yet. I'm not planning to go out anyway." After hanging up, Myrtle made her tea and toast, trying to maintain her normal routine despite the commotion outside. Mr. Whiskers seemed agitated by the unusual activity, pacing near the windows and flicking his tail. "It's all right, old boy," she told him, stroking his orange fur. "They'll get bored and leave eventually." Her phone rang again. This time it was Tanya. "I'm so sorry about the reporters," she said without preamble. "I'm coming over, but it might take me a while to get through that crowd." "You don't need to come," Myrtle protested. "I'm fine staying inside until they leave." "Actually, I have news. Caroline Lang called again. Mr. Musk is doing a formal press conference today about Project Lifeline. It's going to be live streamed in an hour. She thought you might want to watch it." Myrtle glanced at her small, outdated television. "I don't think I can get a live stream on my TV, dear." "That's why I'm coming over. I'll bring my laptop." True to her word, Tanya arrived 45 minutes later, looking frazzled after pushing through the reporters. She had avoided their questions but promised a statement later just to get past them. "It's like a circus out there," she said, setting up her laptop on Myrtle's kitchen table. "Are you okay with watching this? It might be emotional." Myrtle nodded. "I want to know what's really happening. If my story helped start this, I should follow it through." They got the live stream working just as the press conference began. The setting was sleek and modern, a conference room at one of Musk's company headquarters. Cameras flashed as Elon Musk walked to the podium, wearing a dark suit instead of his usual casual attire. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began. "Yesterday, I announced the creation of Project Lifeline, a new initiative to address the crisis of medication affordability. Today, I want to share more specific details about our plans." Myrtle leaned forward, watching intently as Musk outlined the project. A new kind of pharmaceutical company focused exclusively on affordable medications for chronic conditions. The initial $50 million investment would fund a manufacturing facility in Tennessee, along with a distribution network and online platform for direct ordering. By eliminating middlemen and focusing on generic formulations of the most essential medications, Musk explained, we project cost reductions of 70 to 80% compared to current market prices. A reporter raised her hand. Is this in response to the viral story about Myrtle Perkins, the woman who couldn't afford her heart medication? Musk nodded. Mrs. Perkins's situation crystallized the issue for me. I had the privilege of speaking with her directly, and her dignity in the face of an impossible choice was inspiring. But she's just one of millions facing the same struggle. This project is for all of them. Another reporter stood. Pharmatech stock dropped 15% after your announcement yesterday. Do you intend to disrupt the pharmaceutical industry the way you've disrupted other sectors? I wouldn't say disruption is the goal, Musk replied with a slight smile. Fixing a broken system is. If existing companies feel threatened by affordable medication, that says more about their business model than it does about our mission. The questions continued, each answer revealing more details about the ambitious plan. Project Lifeline would start with heart medications, including Myrtle's, and expand to diabetes, blood pressure, and other common prescriptions. The first products would be available within 6 months, with full operations expected within a year. He's really doing it, Tanya whispered, squeezing Myrtle's hand. The press conference was winding down when a stern-looking man in the front row stood up. Mr. Musk, while your intentions may be admirable, do you really believe you can navigate the complex regulatory landscape of pharmaceuticals? This isn't like building cars or rockets. People's lives are at stake. The room went quiet. The man was clearly a plant from Pharmatech, there to cast doubt on the project. Musk seemed unfazed. You're right that this industry has unique challenges. That's why we've assembled a team of pharmaceutical veterans who share our vision, he said, gesturing to a group of professionals seated to his right, including Dr. Alicia Patel, formerly Pharmatech head of research, who joined us yesterday. A woman in the group nodded as cameras turned to her. The Pharmatech representative looked stunned. Myrtle's phone rang suddenly, a local number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, then answered. Mrs. Perkins, this is Robert Chen from Channel 8 News. We're outside your building. Would you consider giving us a brief statement about Project Lifeline? Myrtle looked at Tanya, who had paused the live stream. What should I do? She whispered, covering the phone. It's entirely up to you, Tanya said. But if you do speak, it might help people understand the human side of this story. Myrtle thought for a moment, then spoke into the phone. I'll come down, but just for a few minutes. After hanging up, she smoothed her dress and checked her appearance in the mirror. Will you come with me? She asked. Of course. Downstairs, the reporter surged forward as Myrtle emerged from the building, Tanya protectively at her side. The Channel 8 reporter approached first. Mrs. Perkins, what was your reaction to Elon Musk's announcement of Project Lifeline? Myrtle took a deep breath. Surprise, mostly. I never expected our conversation to lead to something so significant. Do you believe this project will really help seniors like yourself? I certainly hope so, Myrtle said carefully. For too long, people have had to choose between their medication and their rent, their food. If Mr. Musk can change that, it would be a blessing for millions. Another reporter pushed forward. Have you been in contact with Pharmatech since this began? They've issued a statement questioning the safety of faster, cheaper drug production. Myrtle's eyes flashed with unexpected anger. Safety? They're concerned about safety now? Where was that concern when seniors were cutting pills in half or skipping doses altogether because they couldn't afford them? That doesn't seem very safe to me. Her words, spoken with quiet dignity rather than shouted in rage, had an immediate impact. The reporters went silent, then began furiously taking notes and adjusting cameras. I'm just an ordinary woman who spoke up about something wrong, Myrtle continued. If that helped start a change, then I'm grateful. But this isn't about me. It's about all the people you don't see on the news who are suffering silently. After a few more questions, Tanya gently guided Myrtle back inside. As they rode the elevator up, Myrtle's hands were shaking. You were amazing, Tanya said. So poised, so clear. I didn't mean to get angry about the safety question, Myrtle replied. It just struck me as so hypocritical. Your anger was righteous and perfectly expressed. That clip will be everywhere by tonight. Back in her apartment, Myrtle sank into her chair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline of the impromptu press conference was wearing off. They finished watching the live stream, which had ended with Musk announcing a website where people could register for updates about Project Lifeline. As evening fell, Myrtle's brief statement was indeed playing on every news channel. The story had evolved beyond her personal struggle to a David versus Goliath battle between Musk and the pharmaceutical industry, with Myrtle as the catalyst. Her phone rang continuously. More reporters, but also seniors from across the country who had somehow gotten her number, calling to share their own medication struggles and thank her for speaking up. "I never wanted to be an activist," she told Tanya as they ate the dinner Doris had dropped off, slipping past the few reporters who remained outside. "I just wanted to afford my heart pills." "Sometimes the most powerful movements start with the simplest needs," Tanya replied. That night, after everyone had gone and the reporters had finally dispersed, Myrtle checked her email on the old computer Frank had bought years ago. Among the flood of messages was one from Caroline Lang with the subject line, "Registration Open." The email contained a link to the Project Lifeline website, which had just gone live. A message from Musk was at the top. "Register now to be notified when medications become available. Our first priority is ensuring people like Mrs. Perkins never have to choose between health and home again." Below was a simple form to enter name, contact information, and needed medications. Myrtle hesitated, then typed her information, listing her heart medication in the appropriate field. As she clicked submit, a message appeared. "Thank you for registering. You are user number 1,372,649. Over 1 million people had already signed up in just a few hours." Myrtle stared at the number, tears forming in her eyes. She had never fully grasped how many others were in the same situation until seeing that number. Each digit represented a person with a story, a struggle, a need for the medication that kept them alive. As she turned off her computer and prepared for bed, Myrtle thought about how quickly life could change. One moment she was collapsing on her bathroom floor, alone and afraid. Now she was part of something much bigger than herself. A movement that might truly help all those people who had registered today and millions more. She took her evening pill, a simple act that had become laden with meaning, and whispered a prayer of thanks. Whether Project Lifeline succeeded or failed, at least someone with power and resources was finally trying to fix a broken system. What she didn't know was that across town, in a luxury hotel conference room, the CEO of Pharmatech was meeting with his crisis management team, developing a strategy to protect their profits and, if necessary, to discredit both Elon Musk and the elderly woman who had become the face of their worst public relations nightmare. The first sign that something had changed came in the form of a commercial. Myrtle was watching her morning game shows when a somber announcement interrupted the program. A message from the American Pharmaceutical Safety Coalition. A serious-looking doctor in a white coat appeared on screen. Recent announcements about disrupting the pharmaceutical industry sound appealing. But patients should be aware of the risks. Medications produced with unproven methods may contain impurities or incorrect dosages. Your health is too important to gamble with untested sources. The commercial ended with a website address, safemedsforseniors.org. Myrtle frowned. The message never mentioned Project Lifeline by name, but the timing was no coincidence. Later that day, Tanya arrived with groceries and news. "Have you seen what's happening online?" she asked as she put away the items. "I don't go online much," Myrtle reminded her. "Someone created a fake social media account in your name. It's posting all sorts of things, claiming you exaggerated your financial situation, suggesting you're being manipulated by Musk for publicity." Myrtle sat down heavily. Why would anyone do that? The pharmaceutical industry stands to lose billions if Project Lifeline succeeds. They're fighting back. The attacks intensified over the next few days. Articles appeared questioning Musk's knowledge of pharmaceuticals. Medical experts on news programs warned about the dangers of rushing drug production. And most disturbing to Myrtle, anonymous messages began arriving at her apartment. "You're helping a billionaire play games with people's lives. How much is Musk paying you to be his poster child? Go back to being invisible, old woman." Tanya wanted to report the messages to the police, but Myrtle resisted. "They're just trying to scare me into silence." "It's working," Tanya observed. noting how Myrtle now kept her curtains drawn and jumped at unexpected noises. The campaign against Project Lifeline wasn't limited to Myrtle. Musk faced harsh criticism from business analysts who claimed he was out of his depth. Government regulatory agencies issued cautious statements about maintaining quality standards for any new pharmaceutical ventures. One evening, as Myrtle and Doris watched the news together, a familiar face appeared on screen. The CEO of Pharmatech, Harrison Wells. "While we welcome competition in any market," he said smoothly, "we must express concern about promises being made to vulnerable populations. Pharmaceutical development is complex and heavily regulated for good reason. Our seniors deserve medications they can trust, not experimental products rushed to market by newcomers with no experience in this critical field." Doris snorted. Easy for him to say when he makes millions, while people like you have to choose between medicine and food. Myrtle remained quiet, a heaviness settling in her chest that had nothing to do with her heart condition. She had never wanted to be in the middle of a corporate battle. She had just wanted to afford her medication. The next day, Tanya arrived, looking worried. "Caroline Lang called. Musk wants to speak with you again. He's concerned about the backlash you're facing." Before Myrtle could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed her daughter, Elaine, calling from California. "Mom," Elaine's voice was tense. "Why didn't you tell me what was happening? I had to find out from a coworker who saw you on national news." "I didn't want to worry you," Myrtle said weakly. "Not worry me? Mom, there are attack pieces about you online. Someone sent me a link to an article claiming you're being manipulated by a billionaire." "It's not true, Elaine. I just told my story. I'm booking a flight right now. I'll be there tomorrow." After hanging up, Myrtle looked at Tanya with tears in her eyes. "Now I've burdened my daughter, exactly what I didn't want to do." "She loves you," Tanya said gently, "and maybe it's good she's coming. You shouldn't face this alone." That night, Myrtle couldn't sleep. Had she made a terrible mistake by sharing her story? Had she become a pawn in a game between powerful forces? The weight of it all pressed down on her. Just before dawn, she heard a noise outside. Looking through a crack in her curtains, she saw someone placing a sign in front of her apartment building. In the dim light, she could just make out the words, "Myrtle Perkins stands with Big Pharma victims." Her neighbors rallied quickly. By the time Myrtle finished her morning tea, the sign was gone, removed by Mr. Jimenez from the first floor. Throughout the day, neighbors stopped by with small offerings. Mrs. Lee's homemade cookies, Mr. Wilson's fresh tomatoes from his balcony garden, notes of support from people she barely knew. "The whole building is behind you," Doris reported. "People are furious about how you're being treated." When Elaine arrived that evening, she hugged her mother tightly. "I should have been here sooner." "You're here now," Myrtle said, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. As they talked into the night, catching up on everything that had happened, Myrtle's doorbell rang. Elaine answered cautiously. It was the apartment manager, holding a small package. "This came from Mrs. Perkins by special courier. I signed for it." Inside was a 6-month supply of Myrtle's heart medication with a simple note, "No one should have to wait for what they need to survive," from a friend. The package had no return address, no company name. Elaine examined the pills carefully. "They look exactly like your regular medication, but who sent them?" "Musk?" Tanya suggested. Myrtle shook her head. "I don't think so. He would have mentioned it when he called." They would never discover that the anonymous donor was actually a mid-level executive at Pharmatech itself. Someone who had been moved by Myrtle's story and was using their position to help from within the system they knew was broken. The next morning, Myrtle woke to find her story had taken another turn. The local news reported that dozens of seniors had gathered outside Pharmatech's regional office with signs reading, "I am Myrtle Perkins," and "Medication is a right, not a luxury." Across the country, Project Lifeline's registration numbers had reached 5 million people, a silent army of Americans saying they wanted an alternative to the system that had failed Myrtle and countless others like her. 3 months passed. The leaves in Oak Ridge changed from green to gold, then fell to the ground. The air grew crisp, and in that time, Myrtle's life settled into a new normal. Elaine had stayed for 2 weeks before returning to California, more at ease after seeing that her mother was well supported by Tanya, Doris, and now an entire community of neighbors and supporters. They spoke daily by phone now, a connection rekindled by crisis. The reporters had long since moved on to other stories. The threatening messages had stopped. Myrtle's mysterious medication supply remained adequate, though she still didn't know who had sent it. On a sunny October morning, Tanya burst into Myrtle's apartment, waving her phone excitedly. "They've done it! The first partnerships are official!" She showed Myrtle the screen, where a Project Lifeline press release announced agreements with 3 generic drug manufacturers. "Look," Tanya pointed to a highlighted section. "Your heart medication is one of the first 20 drugs they'll produce. The price will be 80% lower than what you were paying." Myrtle adjusted her reading glasses. "When will they be available?" "Early next year. They've already broken ground on the manufacturing facility." Tanya scrolled to a photo of Musk at a construction site surrounded by workers in hard hats. "It's happening just outside of Nashville." Myrtle smiled. After months of announcements and promises, seeing actual construction felt like the first tangible proof that Project Lifeline was real. That afternoon, as Myrtle walked to the senior center for her weekly card game, she noticed fewer stares from strangers. The initial fame had faded, allowing her to return to some semblance of normality. Yet things had undeniably changed. Other seniors at the center treated her with newfound respect, often asking for updates on Project Lifeline. Registration opened for the notification system. Myrtle told her card group as they dealt the cards. "You can sign up to be alerted when your medications become available." Mrs. Jenkins, who had been cutting her blood pressure pills in half to make them last longer, immediately wrote down the website address. 1 million people signed up in the first week, Myrtle added. "That's the power of need." Mr. Holloway nodded, arranging his cards. People have been waiting for something like this for years. Meanwhile, the pharmaceutical industry's response had evolved. After the initial attacks failed to gain traction, Pharmatech and other companies announced their own price reduction initiative. Modest compared to Project Lifeline's promises, but still a direct response to the pressure. "They're scared," Doris observed. When a commercial for Pharmatech's new senior savings program aired during their favorite TV show, Myrtle could see the writing on the wall. That evening, Myrtle received a call from Caroline Lang. "Musk would like to invite you to the groundbreaking ceremony for the Project Lifeline facility next month. He feels it would be fitting for you to be there as the person whose story inspired this effort." Myrtle hesitated. The thought of being in the spotlight again made her uneasy. "I don't know if I should." "Please consider it," Caroline urged. "It's an important moment, and your presence would mean a lot to everyone involved." After hanging up, Myrtle called Tanya. "They want me at the groundbreaking ceremony. What do you think?" "I think you should go," Tanya said without hesitation. "You helped start this, you should see it taking shape. But all those cameras, all that attention..." "It's not about the attention," Tanya reminded her. "It's about showing people that this project is connected to real people, real needs. Your face helps everyone remember why this matters." Myrtle considered this. "Would you come with me? I don't want to go alone." "I wouldn't miss it," Tanya replied. The invitation sparked something in Myrtle, a desire to understand more about what she had helped create. She asked Tanya to help her research Project Lifeline more thoroughly. They spent evenings reading articles, watching interviews, and learning about the complex process of manufacturing generic medications. What impressed Myrtle most wasn't just the scale of the project, but how many industry professionals had joined the effort, leaving established companies to be part of something new. Why would they leave secure jobs? She wondered. Some things matter more than security, Tanya suggested, like knowing your work truly helps people. As the groundbreaking ceremony approached, Pharmatech made one last attempt to undermine Project Lifeline. Their CEO appeared on a business news program, suggesting the project would fail within a year. "Manufacturing pharmaceuticals requires expertise and infrastructure that can't be created overnight," he insisted. "This is a publicity stunt that will ultimately disappoint millions of vulnerable seniors who are being given false hope." When Tanya showed Myrtle the clip, the elderly woman shook her head. "He still doesn't understand. Even if Project Lifeline never produces a single pill, it's already succeeded." "What do you mean?" Tanya asked. It showed that things can change, that someone with power actually cared enough to try, that millions of people are willing to stand up and say the current system isn't working. Myrtle smiled. Hope isn't false if it makes people demand better. On the morning they were to leave for Nashville, Myrtle stood in front of her closet, considering what to wear to a groundbreaking ceremony. She settled on a simple blue dress, the same one she had worn for her video call with Musk months ago. As Tanya drove them to Nashville, Myrtle watched the Tennessee countryside roll by, thinking about how far her story had traveled from her small apartment. "Are you nervous?" Tanya asked. "A little," Myrtle admitted, "but mostly I'm just grateful to be here, to see it. 3 months ago, I was skipping doses of my heart medication, not knowing if I'd make it to the next month. Now, look where we are." What neither of them knew was that the groundbreaking ceremony would hold more than just symbolic shovels and speeches. It would reveal a truth that would finally make sense of why Elon Musk had been so moved by Myrtle's story, a personal connection that went beyond business or publicity. The Project Lifeline construction site sprawled across 30 acres of former farmland outside Nashville. As Tanya's car approached, Myrtle could see a large white tent set up near partially constructed buildings. Rows of chairs faced a stage with a podium. Media trucks lined the entrance, cameras and equipment ready. "There are hundreds of people here," Myrtle observed, suddenly nervous. "It's a big deal," Tanya replied, parking in the area designated for VIP guests. "This facility will eventually employ over 1,000 people." A young woman with a clipboard approached as they got out of the car. "Mrs. Perkins, I'm Sophia from the Project Lifeline team. We've been expecting you." She handed them badges with their names and "special guest" printed in bold letters. "Mr. Musk would like to speak with you before the ceremony, if that's all right." Sophia led them through the crowd to a small trailer serving as a temporary office. She knocked, then opened the door. Elon Musk stood talking with a small group of people who fell silent when Myrtle entered. Unlike their video call, where he had seemed relaxed, today he appeared slightly nervous. "Mrs. Perkins, thank you for coming," he said, shaking her hand, then Tanya's. "This means a great deal to me." "Thank you for the invitation," Myrtle said. "I never expected to see something like this come from sharing my story." The others left the trailer, giving them privacy. Musk gestured for Myrtle and Tanya to sit. "Before we go out there," he said, "there's something I'd like to share with you. Something personal that I haven't discussed publicly." Myrtle nodded, curious. "When I first saw your story on the news, it affected me deeply. Not just because of the injustice, but because it reminded me of someone." He paused. "My mother faced a similar situation years ago, before I had the resources to help her." Myrtle's eyes widened. She had a heart condition that required expensive medication. This was in South Africa, where I grew up. But the problem was the same. A medication she needed to survive was priced beyond reach. His voice grew quieter. "She would skip doses, just like you did." "What happened?" Myrtle asked gently. "She was lucky. A research program provided her medication for free, but only after months of struggle. During that time, I made her a promise that someday, if I ever had the power to fix this broken system, I would." Musk looked directly at Myrtle. "Your story reminded me of that promise, one I'd let myself forget as I pursued other projects. When I spoke with you that day, hearing your concern for others rather than just yourself, it was like hearing my mother's voice again." Tanya reached for Myrtle's hand, which had begun to tremble slightly. "Today, I'd like to properly acknowledge your role in this project," Musk continued. "With your permission, we'd like to name this facility the Perkins Musk Center, after you and my mother." Tears formed in Myrtle's eyes. "I don't know what to say. I'm just an ordinary woman." "Sometimes ordinary people create extraordinary change," Musk replied. "Will you accept?" Myrtle nodded, too moved to speak. Outside, the ceremony was about to begin. Hundreds of people took their seats: construction workers, company employees, local officials, and media. Myrtle and Tanya were escorted to front row seats. The mayor of Nashville spoke first, welcoming Project Lifeline to Tennessee and praising the jobs it would create. A doctor discussed the health impact of affordable medications. A former pharmaceutical executive explained how the direct-to-consumer model would slash prices while maintaining quality. Finally, Musk took the stage. He outlined Project Lifeline's progress, partnerships established, regulatory hurdles navigated, and the online platform nearing completion. He announced that the facility would eventually produce 100 essential medications at a fraction of current costs, with the first 20 available in just 6 months. But today, he said, his tone shifting, I want to share something more personal. The audience grew quiet. This project isn't just about business or innovation. It's about keeping a promise I made long ago. For the first time publicly, Musk shared the story of his mother's struggle and his forgotten promise. Many in the audience wiped away tears as he spoke. When I saw Myrtle Perkins on the news explaining how she had to choose between her heart medication and paying rent, it was like hearing my mother's story again. It reminded me of what I had vowed to do. He gestured for Myrtle to join him on stage. She rose slowly, Tanya helping her up the steps. Mrs. Perkins never sought attention. She simply told her truth. But in doing so, she became the catalyst for change that will help millions. Musk turned to address her directly. Your courage in sharing your story has already changed the pharmaceutical industry. Companies are lowering prices, politicians are discussing new regulations, and most importantly, people who felt isolated in their struggles now know they're not alone. He revealed a covered sign, which, when unveiled, read Perkins Musk Center, in large letters, named for two women who faced the same impossible choice, his mother and Myrtle Perkins. This facility represents our commitment that no one should ever have to choose between their medication and their basic needs. The audience stood, applauding, cameras flashing. Myrtle, overwhelmed by emotion, leaned slightly against Musk for support. Would you like to say a few words? He asked quietly. Myrtle hadn't prepared anything, but as she looked out at the crowd, construction workers who would build this place, healthcare professionals who had left established careers to join the effort, reporters who would share this story, she knew what she wanted to say. She stepped to the microphone, her voice shaking at first, then growing stronger. 6 months ago, I was alone on my bathroom floor, having collapsed because I couldn't afford the medicine that keeps my heart beating properly. Today, I'm standing here, witnessing something I never thought possible, real change happening in a system I had accepted as unchangeable. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. This isn't just about cheaper medicine. It's about dignity. It's about a society that says no one should suffer or die because they can't afford the treatment they need. I'm just one person who spoke up, but there are millions whose stories haven't been told, who struggle silently every day. Myrtle gestured to the partially constructed buildings behind her. This place is being built for them. And if sharing my story helped make that happen, then every uncomfortable moment, every difficult day in the spotlight was worth it. After her speech, Myrtle was given the ceremonial first shovel for the groundbreaking. As cameras captured the moment, she pushed the shovel into the Tennessee soil, symbolically beginning a new chapter in healthcare accessibility. The image of an 82-year-old woman in a simple blue dress breaking ground on a facility that would challenge an entire industry would become iconic, appearing in news outlets worldwide. Later, as the formal ceremony ended and guests mingled under the tent, Myrtle was approached by a woman with a dignified bearing and a warmth in her eyes that seemed familiar. Mrs. Perkins, the woman said with a slight accent, I'm Mae Musk, Elon's mother. I wanted to thank you personally for what you've done. I didn't do anything special, Myrtle insisted. I just told my story. Sometimes that's the most powerful thing we can do, Mae replied, taking Myrtle's hands in hers. You reminded my son of his promise, and in doing so, you've helped create something that will help countless people like us. As the two women spoke, sharing their experiences across generations and continents, they formed a bond that transcended their different backgrounds, united by the common experience of vulnerability and the hope that those who came after them would never have to make the same impossible choices. 6 months after the groundbreaking ceremony, Myrtle sat at her kitchen table, staring at a small white package. It had arrived that morning by special courier, with Project Lifeline printed on the label. Inside was a month's supply of her heart medication, now branded with the Project Lifeline logo. A letter accompanied it. Dear Mrs. Perkins, you are receiving the first medication produced at the Perkins Musk Center. What once cost you $247.88 now costs $42.50. This represents not just a price reduction, but a promise kept with gratitude. The Project Lifeline team. Myrtle ran her fingers over the bottle, tears forming in her eyes. The journey from her bathroom floor to this moment seemed almost unbelievable. She called Tanya immediately. "It's here," she said. When Tanya answered, "The first Project Lifeline medication." "I'm coming over," Tanya replied. "This calls for a celebration." When Tanya arrived an hour later, she wasn't alone. Doris came too, along with several neighbors who had supported Myrtle throughout her unexpected journey to activism. They brought a small cake with victory written in blue icing. "It's not just your victory," Doris said, serving slices on Myrtle's best plates. "It's for all of us." Mr. Wilson from apartment 3B held up his coffee cup in a toast to Myrtle, who spoke up when the rest of us stayed silent. Myrtle blushed. "I just told my story. It was Mr. Musk who made this happen, but he needed your story to remind him why it mattered," Tanya pointed out. "That's no small thing." As they celebrated in Myrtle's small apartment, similar scenes were playing out across the country. Project Lifeline had begun shipping its first batch of medications to the millions who had registered on their platform. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. Local news stations interviewed seniors receiving their first affordable medications. Social media filled with stories of relief and gratitude. Healthcare providers reported patients returning to proper dosing schedules after years of rationing their pills. But perhaps the most significant impact came from how the broader pharmaceutical industry responded. Faced with a viable competitor offering drastically lower prices, many companies began reducing their own prices to remain competitive. Pharmatech, which had fought hardest against Project Lifeline, announced a 40% price reduction on their most common medications. Their CEO appeared on business news programs, framing the decision as responding to market changes rather than admitting they had been charging excessive prices all along. "They're scrambling," Tanya observed one evening as she and Myrtle watched the announcements. "They see the writing on the wall." Indeed, change was sweeping through the industry faster than anyone had anticipated. Congressional hearings on medication pricing began, with several pharmaceutical executives being grilled about their pricing practices. State legislators introduced bills to increase pricing transparency. Insurance companies adjusted their coverage models to account for the new market realities. For Myrtle, the most meaningful change wasn't happening in corporate boardrooms or legislative chambers, but in her senior center. Each week, more members would show her their Project Lifeline medication bottles, often with tears in their eyes. "I can afford my diabetes medicine and heat my apartment this winter," Mrs. Jenkins told her during their card game. "My wife can take her full dosage again," Mr. Holloway shared. "Her pain is finally under control." These personal stories moved Myrtle more deeply than any news headline or stock market report. 1 month after receiving her first Project Lifeline medication, Myrtle got an unexpected call from Caroline Lang. "Mrs. Perkins, the Perkins Musk Center is now fully operational, and we're expanding faster than projected. Would you be interested in helping us reach more seniors who might not know about the program?" "What did you have in mind?" Myrtle asked cautiously, still wary of too much public attention. "We're setting up a senior support line, a call center specifically to help older Americans navigate the system. We'd like you to be part of it if you're willing." The idea appealed to Myrtle immediately. "I could do that from here, from Oak Day." "Actually, we'd like to establish the main call center at your senior center in Oak Ridge if they're agreeable. It would create about 20 part-time jobs for seniors who want to help others in similar situations." Myrtle's heart swelled at the thought. Not charity, but meaningful work for seniors who still had much to contribute. Within weeks, a corner of the Oakdale Senior Center was transformed into a small call center. Comfortable desks with phones and simple computer systems were installed. Training was provided for the seniors who volunteered, many of whom had never used computers before but were eager to learn. Myrtle took to the work naturally. Her years as a teacher had given her patience and clarity when explaining things, and her own experience navigating medication challenges gave her authentic empathy for callers. "The system isn't designed to be easy," she would tell frustrated callers, "but I promise you, We'll figure it out together. The impact of this personal approach was profound. Seniors who had given up on affording their medications found not just information, but understanding on the other end of the line. The call center quickly became a model that Project Lifeline replicated in senior centers across the country. As spring turned to summer, Myrtle received another package from Project Lifeline. This one contained an invitation. The White House requests the pleasure of your company at a ceremony honoring healthcare innovators and patient advocates. The president will present you with the Presidential Medal of Freedom for your courage in bringing attention to the medication affordability crisis and inspiring systemic change. Myrtle stared at the invitation in disbelief. The Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. When she showed it to Tanya, the young nurse hugged her tightly. You deserve this, Myrtle. You've changed so many lives. It feels strange, Myrtle admitted. All of this started because I couldn't afford my pills. I never set out to change anything. Sometimes the most powerful changes start that way, Tanya replied, from one person's simple truth. Elaine flew in from California to accompany her mother to Washington. Doris helped Myrtle select a new dress for the occasion. Tanya arranged for time off from the hospital. The ceremony at the White House was televised nationally. As Myrtle walked to the podium, steady despite her age, a hush fell over the East Room. The president placed the medal around her neck with words that would be repeated in history books. For reminding a nation that the measure of our healthcare system is not its profits, but its compassion, and for showing that one voice can indeed change the world. We honor Myrtle Perkins with our nation's highest civilian recognition. Myrtle spoke briefly, her voice clear and dignified. I accept this honor on behalf of every person who has ever had to choose between their health and their home, their medicine and their meals. May those impossible choices become a thing of the past. In the audience, Elon Musk sat beside his mother, both applauding with genuine emotion. After the ceremony, May embraced Myrtle warmly. We've started something important together, she said, something that will outlast all of us. That evening in her hotel room, Myrtle called Frank's brother to share the day's events. As she described the ceremony, she glanced at her medication bottle on the nightstand, the small white pill that had once threatened her financial security, now a symbol of what could change when people refuse to accept an unjust system. Back in Oaked, a week later, life returned to its new normal. Myrtle worked at the call center 3 mornings a week. She played cards with her friends at the senior center. She took her medication without counting pennies. But something fundamental had shifted in her world. The pharmacy that had once charged her $247.88 for her heart medication now offered it for $65. It was still more than Project Lifeline, but a dramatic reduction. The pharmacist had apologized to her, explaining that they were now able to negotiate better prices from suppliers who feared losing business to Project Lifeline. Across the country, similar changes were happening. Competition was finally forcing the market to serve patients rather than just shareholders. It wasn't a perfect solution. Many medications were still too expensive, and many people still struggled. But it was progress. Few had thought possible a year earlier. 1 year to the day after her collapse on the bathroom floor, Myrtle received a letter that completed the circle of her journey. It was from a woman in Oregon whose mother had been featured in a news story about seniors benefiting from Project Lifeline. Dear Miss Perkins, my mother is alive today because of what you started. Her blood pressure medication used to cost $380 a month. She was cutting pills in half. Now she pays $64 through Project Lifeline. The doctor says her numbers are better than they've been in years. You didn't know my mother, but you saved her life. I thought you should know that. With eternal gratitude, Sarah Williams. Myrtle carefully placed the letter in a box where she kept all the messages from people whose lives had been touched by Project Lifeline. The box, once empty, was now overflowing with stories of hope and healing. As she sat on her porch that evening, watching the sunset with Mr. Whiskers purring in her lap, Myrtle reflected on the strange and unexpected path her life had taken. From the depths of despair on her bathroom floor to the heights of the White House ceremony. Her journey had become intertwined with the journeys of millions of others. and it had all begun with one simple truth spoken aloud. No one should have to choose between their heart and their home. 1 year to the day after Myrtle had received her first Project Lifeline medication, she sat in her favorite chair by the window. Sunlight streamed in, highlighting the silver in her hair. At 83, she felt better than she had in years. Her apartment looked different now. New curtains hung in the windows, a gift from Elaine. The water stain on the ceiling had been repaired. The past due notices were long gone, replaced by framed photos. Myrtle at the White House, Myrtle at the Perkins Musk Center, Myrtle with the call center team she now led 3 days a week. Mr. Whiskers dozed in a patch of sunlight, content and well-fed. He no longer had to worry about who would care for him if Myrtle were gone. The doorbell rang. It was Tanya, holding a small cake with a single candle. "Happy anniversary," she said, setting the cake on the kitchen table. 1 year since everything changed. Doris arrived moments later with a bouquet of daisies from everyone at the center. She explained that they wanted to mark the occasion. As they enjoyed the cake, Myrtle's phone rang. It was Caroline Lang. "Mrs. Perkins, I have some news. You might want to turn on the television, channel 8, right now." Myrtle did as suggested. The screen showed a press conference at Pharmatech headquarters. Harrison Wells, the CEO who had once dismissed Project Lifeline as a publicity stunt, was making an announcement. After careful consideration of market changes and patient needs, Pharmatech is proud to announce the launch of Access Meds, our new direct-to-consumer platform offering medications at significantly reduced prices. His face looked strained, his smile forced. "We recognize that the healthcare landscape is evolving, and we intend to be leaders in that evolution." Tanya laughed. "They're copying Project Lifeline. They fought it, then they had to join it." "Competition works wonders," Doris observed. After the brief celebration, Tanya had news of her own. "I've accepted a position with Project Lifeline. I'll be leading their patient advocacy division, focusing on education and outreach." "That's wonderful," Myrtle exclaimed. "Will you have to move?" "No, I'll work from the regional office they're opening in Oaked next month." Tanya smiled. "It turns out our little town has become a model for their community-based approach." Indeed, Oak D had transformed in subtle ways over the past year. The senior center, once a quiet place for card games and occasional potlucks, was now a hub of activity. The call center employed 25 seniors part-time, giving them purpose along with supplemental income. A vacant store downtown had been converted into a Project Lifeline information center where people could register and learn about available medications. Later that evening, Myrtle had another visitor, a woman she had never met in person, but whose voice she recognized immediately from their many phone conversations. "I'm Clara," she said when Myrtle opened the door. The mysterious medication donor, Clara, was in her 50s with kind eyes and a nervous smile. She explained that she had been a mid-level executive at Pharmatech when Myrtle's story first broke. "I couldn't speak up publicly. I needed my job, but I couldn't do nothing either. So I used my employee discount to send you those medications." She took a deep breath. "I've left Pharmatech now. I'm joining Project Lifeline's compliance team. I know the industry from the inside, all the ways companies manipulate prices. I can help make sure that doesn't happen again." Myrtle hugged her, deeply moved by this final piece of her story falling into place. "Your kindness came when I needed it most." As Clara left, she turned back with one last thought. "Your story gave a lot of us inside the industry the courage to make different choices. Mrs. Perkins, you'll never know how many lives you've touched." That night, before bed, Myrtle sat at her small desk to write in the journal she had started keeping since her White House visit. She wanted to record her thoughts on this 1-year anniversary. Today, Project Lifeline announced they've reached 10 million patients. 10 million people who can now afford their medications. The original facility can't keep up with demand, so they're breaking ground on 2 more, one in Michigan, one in Arizona. Congress passed the Medication Affordability Act last week. It won't fix everything, but it's a start. Some are calling it the Myrtle Perkins Act, though that wasn't the official name. Strange to think my collapse on the bathroom floor somehow led to a law that might help millions. What I keep coming back to is, this change seemed impossible until it wasn't. For years, we all accepted that medications would be priced out of reach, that seniors would cut pills and skip doses, that the system was too big to change. Now we know better. She paused, looking at Frank's photo on her desk. I wish Frank could see what happened. He always said I was too stubborn for my own good. Turns out I was stubborn for everyone's good. The next morning, Myrtle went to the senior center for her shift at the call center. As she settled at her desk, a young woman approached, barely 20, nervous and clutching a folder. Mrs. Perkins, I'm Emma. My grandmother needs help with her medication registration. She's on a fixed income, and her arthritis medicine is still too expensive, even with her insurance. Sit down, dear, Myrtle said gently, gesturing to the chair beside her desk. Let me help you with that. As she walked Emma through the registration process, explaining each step with the patience she had once shown her elementary school students, Myrtle felt a profound sense of completion. The circle that had begun with her own crisis had expanded to include millions of others. And now she was directly helping one more person navigate a system that was finally beginning to work for those who needed it most. When they finished, Emma's eyes filled with tears. My grandma has been in so much pain. This will change everything for her. I know, Myrtle said, patting the young woman's hand. That's exactly why we're here. And in that simple exchange, one person helping another, one story connecting to thousands more, Myrtle Perkins's true legacy took shape. Not in buildings bearing her name or medals on her wall, but in the quiet dignity of lives no longer forced to make impossible choices. Thank you for joining us for The Forgotten Lifeline. Myrtle's journey reminds us that one voice can truly make a difference in this world. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and help spread this message of hope and compassion to others who might need it. And if you enjoyed this story, don't miss our next inspiring video that's appearing on your screen right now. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Remember, sometimes the greatest changes begin with the smallest acts of kindness.